This is The Guardian.
Hello and welcome to The Guardian Football Weekly, an EFL pod. If I was to ask any of the panel what end of the season we're approaching, the answer we'd all hope for would be the business one. It's still a three-way race at the top of the Championship. Leeds just top, but Chris tells it like it is. Wilder and a very mean Scott Parker are steering Sheffield United and Burnley just behind them. Frank Lampard's Coventry are flying into the playoffs, and we'll discuss an incredibly moving interview with the Bristol City manager Liam Manning. It's very tight at the bottom, a big win for Derby over Plymouth, the pick of the results. In League One, plucky low-spending Birmingham are tearing clear, and there's a huge win for plucky low-spending Wrexham over Wycombe just below them, while Charlton are just a curbishly away from breaking into the automatic picture. Meanwhile, at the bottom of League One, I'm sorry we seem to have lost your connection with your Guardian podcast. Please wait while we try to connect you. And in League 2, no one wants to go up while Carlisle and Morecambe really want to go down. We'll do that, answer your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Ben Fisher, welcome.
Hi, Max.
Hello, Sanny Rudravajhala.
Hello.
And from Not the Top 20, George Elek. Hello.
Hello, Max.
Let's begin at the top of the Championship. The title race is great. Leeds played 38, 80 points. Sheffield United played 38, 80 points. Burnley played 38, 78 points. Leeds have a 26-goal better goal difference than Sheffield United, which is quite something. They've only got one win in their last four, though, George. They were 2-0 down at QPR, including a header from Steve Cook. Nice to know where he is. But we're level just into the second half. Probably should have won it. Are they still your favourites?
I mean, they are still the bookmakers' favourites. They're still my favourites. Interestingly, the Not the Top 20's sponsor, AK Bets, paid out on Leeds winning the league before this run of 1 win in 4, which I'm now wondering if they might be regretting slightly, given that they're suddenly not even clear at the top of the table by only on goal difference. But I think there's basically, this is sure to upset some people, and probably including Chris Wilder, but I don't think there's any question as to who the best team in the Championship is or are. It's Leeds. That's been shown, I think, pretty consistently. And their wins against Sheffield United and Sunderland, albeit late, I think further cemented that. But Sheffield United have this incredible capacity to win games that are very, very tight. Burnley, their defensive record this season has been very good, and they've in January added attacking talent in Marcus Edwards, and they're looking the best they've looked all season from an attacking perspective. And I think Leeds are now probably paying for not making that superiority count earlier in the season. They are very, very dominant at home, but away from home they often come unstuck. And in the 2-2 draw against QPR last time out, they'll be relieved that they got a point because they were 2-0 down relatively early in the game. It was also the stage and the scene where their automatic promotion challenge last season really kind of tailed off into a tailspin, and they were able to come back from that position to draw the game 2-2. But at 2-2, it was QPR rather than Leeds that had the better chances to go on and win the game. They are helped by the fact that Sheffield United and Burnley play each other in a couple of weeks, which means that, of course, one of them or both of them will drop points. And their fixtures look relatively easy. I kind of had to keep reminding myself, though, with this, that when you're covering the Championship and you're talking about this, in my mind, you're always thinking about the title and who's going to win the league and everything else. But realistically, for these three teams, until they actually secure automatic promotion, they don't care about that. It's just finishing in the top two.
Sure, of course.
And then getting promoted. And at this stage, even though Leeds' title challenge may have, which looked so secure after the Sheffield United win, may not look like that now, they're still in an unbelievably commanding position to go ahead and win promotion.
Did that upset either of you, Ben, Sanny, or you go along with that, Ben, to you?
No, I'm feeling okay with that. No, I've actually written down here, relatively kind running, but then for Leeds. But I suppose the obvious caveat with that is actually, you're looking at teams towards the bottom of the table, and it is that relatively kind when those guys have so much to play for at this stage as well, rather than just sort of looking at, Plymouth, Stoke and Oxford are not at the top of the league, therefore that's an easier game. And I'm not sure it necessarily is when they're sort of fighting for their lives and fighting to stay up. Yeah, I agree with George. I think Leeds are just so dangerous. They've got so many threats. And then they've got a lot of players, I think, still. I mean, you could put Sheffield and Burnley in this category as well. They've still definitely got some players who are capable of, or maybe they might think they should be in the Premier League. So it's no sort of huge surprise in that sense. But it will be interesting. I do think it's the goalkeeper situation is interesting because Illan Meslier can make some sort of otherworldly saves, but he has made some big errors and he has cost Leeds some points. And I'm sure we'll come on to Sheffield United and Burnley in a second, and certainly Burnley, conceding 11 goals. But I do wonder if that could be a significant kind of factor here, just because it's so tight. Every mistake is going to count from here. And I just think maybe that certainly the defence of Burnley, James Trafford, obviously in the England squad, and Cooper at Sheffield, maybe will make less errors than Meslier, to put it sort of really brutally. But, all three have an amazing chance of doing it.
Just on Leeds, I do think there are some alarm bells. Like in this game, late on, Manor Solomon got subbed off and then had a few histrionics on the sidelines. Like, the silly mistakes, the goals, the goal from Steve Cook, he was completely unmarked. And the first goal for QPR, they gave the ball away. Aronson just gave it away to Saito inside the area. Last year, like before the last window, I did a shoot with Sky with all the Leeds players and Luke Humphreys, the darts player. And the one thing that came away from it was what a nice guy Luke Ayling was, and how he wasn't quite in the team, but he was like just bringing everyone together and being like this guy that getting everyone really like focused and stuff, and just also bring a bit of levity as well. He went off to Borough and now he's there. And I wonder how many senior players they've got. I know, where's the experience and all that sounds a bit of a cliche, but they are missing a bit of that. It's quite a young squad, and I wonder whether...
They've got no leaders. They've got no leaders.
Well, do you know what? When you see stuff like Solomon going off, and having a bit of a hissy fit, when they've got such quality and talent coming off the bench as well, Willie Gnonto, for example, I do wonder where that's coming from. The other major thing I think for them is although Joel Piroux is topping the goal-scoring charts, he's not a traditional number 9. He's not a physical presence. And their plan B of recently has been Pascal Strout, the centre-half, popping up with some goals. So I do think they are a bit limited in what they can do. And I wonder whether having that experience, having something else, having a quintessential English striker like Michael Frey, who's actually Swiss, would have been a great option for them for QPR. They're kind of missing that other option. And I think that is a bit of a worry for them in the kind of running that's coming in now.
I can't believe I just heard that this Leeds team are limited. Like I would say that they're like unlimited in terms of the ways that they can hurt you. Yeah, I mean, I agree that Piroux is someone who isn't your natural striker, but the fact he tops the goal scoring chart shows that scoring goals is obviously no issue. And then to add to that, they've got Solomon and Dan James. I think there's a fair chance that Dan James will at least be shortlisted for player of the season. And Al Tanaka, they've got, it's one of the best signings I think any championship club have made for a long time, along with Wilson Isidore, a player they signed from Fortuna Düsseldorf for next to nothing, who is probably the best centre midfielder in the championship, who, in terms of his on-ball quality and also his goal-scoring threat, has been a massive success. And then players like Ramazani, Matteo Joseph, Willie Gnonto coming off the bench. Like they are, in my mind, so far clear in terms of pure quality than the rest of the division. And in my mind, the reason why, frankly, this promotion battle is so tight, and it seems very basic, but a lot of it is to do with the goalkeepers. I think in Mike Cooper and James Trafford, Sheffield United and Burnley have the two best keepers in the league, along with Victor Johansson at Stoke. Yet Trafford's in the England squads, and I think there's a fair chance that he's going to have an opportunity to stake his claim to be England's number 1 in the next couple of weeks, despite being a championship player. And Mike Cooper, whether it's with Blades or another team, is a Premier League keeper in waiting, whereas Illan Meslier has made a number of high-profile mistakes. Like, in my mind, if you put Cooper or Trafford in goal for Leeds over the course of the season and put Meslier in goal for the other one, there would be probably a 10-point gap between them. It's that stark. So, yeah, I mean, it's easy after a couple of, a run of 4 games with just one win to look for holes in Leeds. But when you consider their amazing winning run prior to that, and, I think their proficiency from set pieces is one of their massive strengths, really, rather than something to knock them with. I'd be really surprised if we see Leeds falling apart again.
Perhaps Sanny just thinks every team is limited in the EFL. That's actually a massive
There's
snob.
definitely truth in that as well.
Now, look, Sanny, you were at the Sheffield derby, and you mentioned Michael Cooper made like a couple of great saves in that game that Sheffield United won 1-0. And Chris Wilder was very bullish afterwards, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was very, very bullish before and after. Before, he talked about he went on a run and nearly got run over, which he blamed on maybe a Sheffield Wednesday fan or two. Yeah, I mean, he's done what I would say, by the way, BBC Radio Sheffield are excellent when it comes to the coverage here. They even had Billy Sharp, who's still playing. He's still at Doncaster Rovers. He was next to me actually in the press area. It's not really a box. It's a huge stadium, Hillsborough. And he really threw everything at it. And Chris Wilder also did in his post-match interview, 16 minutes long, I think, with 3 questions asked of him. And he really did he really did go through the entire gamut from 2016 onwards. But yeah, on the pitch, the Sheffield derby's never really a good game. It's always just a bit of a battle, as much as you kind of want it to be something else. And Wednesday started very brightly, really brightly, and should have been ahead until Michael Cooper just pulled out this brilliant flying palm save from Michael Smith. And then they were able to grow into it and eventually nick the goal in the second half through Rhian Brewster, who, by the way, he's got over 100 games with Sheffield United, but it's over nearly 4 years. He's had a lot of injuries. But he's always got this now. He'll always be that guy who scored that goal. So he's always got that, at least. That's nice for him. But yeah, Wilder, it's cliche to say he gets it. And at full time, in amongst it all, he did have a Sheffield United shirt with Baldock on the back, George Baldock, and he held it up to the Lappings Lane end where the Sheffield United fans were in the higher tier, and then twirled it round his head as well. And by the way, that was all when he was on his own. Like, the players had all gone and he was just there on his own. And after the first game that Sheffield United won, he was singing Sausage Roll instead of Danny Rule to the tune of Boney M. And again, like, he just lives and breathes it. He loves it. He knows exactly what he wants from the club. He talks at length at how he's changed the whole club, how their academy and the setup of getting young players through has been completely revolutionised. And you see that because Ollie Arblas has been brilliant this season until he got injured. Sidney Peck comes in, does so well, he gets into the England under-21 setup. So overall, they've got a very exciting team, bit of a battle, bit of a war. But yeah, they've got a lot of quality there. And by the way, on Leeds, I meant more of a plan B than being limited. Now, Sheffield United do have a plan B.
It's too late now.
I'm cancelled now. Sheffield United do have a plan B, and that is very good.
Ben, you wanted to make a point about Danny Role and the job he's done at Sheffield Wednesday, because Chris Wilder was quite sort of dismissive of what he's done.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's obviously no love lost there. A bit of, understandably, lots of needle. As I say, a bit of needle, lots of needle. Wilder afterwards this time in November, we saw him singing in the pub with his friends and fans, and that's great. And this time we had him, I think, in the hotel, singing "Mind the Gap" Sheffield Wednesday. But I think both things sort of can be true here. I think Chris Wilder has done a really good job. He was very irked at Danny Role seemingly logging on to Transfermarkt and looking at the value or the spend around the squad. But I think Role has done a really good job to get Wednesday into the position they are. Wilder seemed to, he insisted that Wednesday season's over. Blades isn't, but I'm not so sure that is the case. 6 points outside the playoffs. Yeah, they're going to need a good run, but it's not impossible. I think if Danny Rule does lead Wednesday to a top half finish, that's quite the season itself, to be honest, given kind of, they are working with totally different resources. I take Wilder's point that they've not just thrown loads of money at it, but their wage bill will be high. They have spent some money, and some of it very smartly. But yeah, I just think both sort of things here can be true. We don't have to just maybe take Wilder's view that Sheffield Wednesday's season is cooked and, as he said, stick your data where you want it in terms of Danny Rule's vision. But I think both managers done a great job. Obviously, there's a lot of heat in the derby.
Look, below those three, Sunderland are in this sort of, one team slot in fourth on 69 points. Then it is pretty tight. Coventry 59, West Brom 57, Bristol City 57, Middlesbrough 54, Blackburn have 52, same as Watford, Millwall and Sheffield Wednesday on 51. Ben, Coventry smashed Sunderland 3-0. Haji Wright hat-trick, who looked sort of unplayable. And actually, the story is like Sunderland were interesting at the start of the season, right? We know about them a bit, but Frank Lampard and the job he's done, what has he actually done? Because I think, like a lot of people, I just sort of dismissed him as not very good, and he's been absolutely brilliant at Coventry.
Yeah, he's done amazing. I mean, 6 wins in 7. It's quite the way to get back on track. Sunderland, as you say, really impressive team, some great young players, many of whom, obviously, Bellingham, some of those guys we know about. But yeah, it's a weird one with Coventry, because I think at the start of the season you would have said, obviously with Robbins, you thought, yeah, they're going to be there again in terms of the playoffs. But I remember going to Lampard's sort of unveiling, if you like, when he took over, and there's that sort of big sort of sense of scepticism around him, around the appointment, certainly around the timing. Obviously, Robbins, a club legend, sort of going out the door. And actually, Lampard is kind of just carried on where they left off. There's a decent pool of players there. Haji Wright and Sakamoto I really like, and they've added to it in January, getting Matt Grimes, probably one of the best, sort of most consistent players, at least in the Championship for a number of years. Getting him from Swansea. They've got a really nice blend, 3 at the back. They're quite kind of direct, but I mean that in a positive way. They sort of have a go. They get at you, and yeah, I think he's done an amazing job. And it's actually it's nice to see, because you see now the fans. There's that amazing connection between Lampard and the fans. Obviously, he's a very sort of clever, charismatic guy. He knows that side of it. He knows how that works. But he's actually done a really good job. Some of those players, some of those additions, they've been able to do because, well, they've sold Harmer and let O'Hare go, a couple of those guys to Sheffield United, Gyökeres. So I don't think we should sort of make out this is kind of a sort of a budget fairy tale, but equally we have to kind of doff our cap and say Lampard has done a great job, especially when there was so much noise and kind of, I'm not sure about that, it's sort of jobs for the boys. And he said, I remember at the unveiling, he was like, look, everyone keeps saying to me, why do you want to do this? But he was like, I don't want to just sit at home and play golf. I want to work. I want to show I can do it. And, as much as, it'd be easy to not do that, fair play to him for coming back in. And yeah, he's shown he's a really good manager at the moment.
And he has a golf course at his house, which is, that shows how well he's doing, doesn't it? Yes, Sanny?
What Lampard has said himself, and we talked about this when he first went to Coventry, he, as a player, said that he wasn't the best player and had to really work at his game. And it's something he's been doing a lot with Coventry players. And he said it at Derby as well. He actually enjoys playing with or working with players who want to learn. So the thing about the egos of Premier League players, he hasn't got that at Coventry. And that's working really well. And every player keeps stepping up a level. Jack Rodoni's injured at the moment, but he's one that was outstanding for Lampard, and a player that Lampard kind of sees a lot of himself in that work rate, that effort. And every game, a different player seems to be stepping up. And this time around, Haji Wright, off the back of 4 months out with an ankle ligament injury, comes in and puts in performance like that. So he's able to get so much out of these players, and they all want to learn, and they're all willing to do so. And it's kind of a good kind of model for a player like Lampard, one of those excellent generational players, what they can do if they go down to a lower level and they've got players willing to learn. He's got that at Coventry. I
think it's also worth giving some credit to his assistant Joe Edwards as well. Previously, Lampard had worked with Jody Morris, who is his assistant. I always think with managers like, I can't believe we're going to package these two together, but Lampard and Gerrard, where maybe their management style is quite, in terms of managing the culture, and quite man management heavy. And they hire a coach who maybe does more of the training ground work. We saw with Gerrard, for example, his success at Rangers came with Mick Beale as his assistant. When he lost Beale and Critchley went in at Villa, that's when things kind of really started to spiral. It wouldn't surprise me at all if part of the reason why Lampard in the past has maybe not been that convincing and now is doing well is because in Edwards he's got someone, and Millwall fans may disagree after his ill-fated spell there last season, but he's incredibly highly rated as a coach. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if Edwards' impact and influence at Coventry is a big reason why they're doing so well.
Bristol City are 7th. They're on a great run, Ben. You did a brilliant interview with Liam Manning. It's incredibly moving. He lost his baby son recently. Didn't know whether to go back to football management. Tell us about the time that you spent with him.
Quite raw, as you say, moving, quite difficult to hear, obviously, for long parts of that interview. I thought Liam spoke just incredibly, really, sort of immeasurable strength, so powerfully opening up, obviously around a really, really difficult subject. And I'm sure it will help at least one person, which was kind of the aim of doing the piece, to be honest. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he spoke about the sort of, the reality of when something like that happens on his world, his family's world. And it's difficult to hear because they've got a 6-year-old son who he sort of joked, is bowling around Ashton Gate, knows his way around better than him. But, it's about looking out for him. And there was a really touching bit where he said Isaac, his 6-year-old, was looking out for robins, obviously Bristol City's nickname, and stars in the sky, which really got me. And there was a few kind of, put in the piece, a few lump in the throat moments, a few sort of, gulps, and you try and move on. And, at times it's very difficult to, almost get a flow, I suppose, because it's really hard. But, transcribing it is tough as well. And then writing it, trying to do it justice, if that's the right word or phrase. So, but in terms of the football, that was the other thing. It was like the premise of the piece was, let's try and hopefully help somebody here and tell your kind of story opening up for the first time. But actually, as I put in the piece, it was important to talk football as well because he's doing an amazing job. Bristol City are in a position they've not been for many, many years. Obviously reached the playoff final 2008, and they're in with a chance in mid-March of being in the playoffs. Nobody says they're going to do it, but actually the way the results went at the weekend and their form, whereas there were sort of 9 teams maybe chasing 2 spots, maybe that is already kind of slimmed down to 5 or 6. Obviously, there's a long way to go, but they're sort of primed there. They're just outside the playoffs in goal difference. And he's got a young team. Nahki Wells is the only player over 30. Jason Knight, the captain, is one of 4 outfield players to play every minute in the Championship this season. Has been absolutely superb. And it feels like they're onto something. I mean, it's a funny one because, the whole city of Bristol sort of pining for Premier League football, red and blue, I suppose. But City last in the top flight in 79-80. But they've got destiny in their own hands. And I think Manning has done a really impressive job, and obviously there's so much going on. It's hard to remember, I suppose, sometimes, as he sort of stressed, this sense of perspective, the bigger picture, the reality of, it's disappointing to, I don't know, throw away a last minute lead, but actually let's remember what's going on and what's bigger than football. As hard as that is.
Yeah, well, that's a great piece, and I'd recommend anyone seeks it out. At the bottom of the Championship, Plymouth 33 points. Luton 35, Derby 38. Above them, Cardiff and Stoke on 39. Hull have 41. Oxford and Portsmouth 42. I guess you could go to Swansea on 44 and QPR on 45. That Derby-Plymouth game, pretty important at the bottom, George. Derby were 2 up. Plymouth got it back to 2-2. 88th minute winner by Marcus Harness. I mean, appropriate if a harness keeps you safe, I thought. But thank you very much. But like John Eustace as well. Sorry, yeah, I know it was terrible, but a massive win for them.
Yeah, huge win and a third win on the bounce. And despite the fact that John Eustace is a very good manager for the level, and I think we're seeing, given especially how Blackburn's form has tailed off since he left them, he's someone who's a very canny operator. But no Derby fans really saw this coming. It felt like Derby had almost given up after the initial form after Eustace came in wasn't particularly good, but 3 wins in a row, 2 of them at home and then away at Argyle. And doing so in this manner has put them right back in the picture in terms of trying to survive. It feels... I'm living this relegation battle because I support one of the teams in it, in Oxford. Where it felt a couple of weeks ago that basically Argyle, Luton and Derby were all so bad that a points tally in kind of the low 40s was probably going to be enough to be safe because they just weren't picking up any points. But that's changed now, which is frustrating. Luton have won 2 of their last 4 games and were very, very good in the first half against Borough on Saturday, but weren't able to find a way through. Even Argyle went away, who basically never win away from home or even score away from home. They went away to Portsmouth and beat them. And Cardiff go away to Blackburn and beat them too. Suddenly all these teams picking up points, and it means that teams like Portsmouth, who would have thought they were safe after beating Leeds at Fratton Park just over a week ago, they then lose 2 games in a row. Swansea, who won a couple of games after sacking Luke Williams. Fans of these clubs, they were heading for the beach. They thought they were done. They thought they were safe. But the likes of Derby and Cardiff and Luton getting these wins means it's suddenly now looking like it could be a high 40s points tally needed, at the very least, to stay up, which is slightly frustrating. But yeah, Eustace doing a great job. I think it's pretty hard to see a way out for Argyle now, despite that win at Pompey. To lose at home to Derby, that was such an important game to get a win from. And despite their incredible efforts in the FA Cup, you kind of wonder if possibly, Mira Muslic was very keen to say that those performances against Liverpool and Manchester City gave them belief and momentum, but the league performances still haven't been great. And it's hard to see them getting out. Luton are a very interesting one, though, where obviously there's no way they should be in this position. Matt Bloomfield's come in and hasn't really made them any better, I wouldn't say. But we've seen in flashes, certainly the first half against Borough, the first half, and again, they lost against Sheffield United a couple of weeks ago. Every so often they put in the kind of 30-minute, 35-minute display that would have them being a top half championship side, but they can't seem to do it, not even in back-to-back games, but to last a whole 90 minutes, and that's where they're coming unstuck. And I think there's been an assumption. Alfie Doughty gave an interview a couple of months ago saying there was no way they get relegated. There's been an assumption, I think, within the club and outside that eventually Luton will turn it around, but there aren't many games to go now, and that the gap is only growing bigger.
There was a lovely moment, the Plymouth winner, when they cut to the fans to see an old man flicking the V's to the home fans and then hugging his wife. I mean, I presume his wife. Be an odd place if you were having an affair. That's not what you do, is it? I mean, I don't know. I'm not having an affair. Far too tired. More than anything. It's not relevant, but if I was to book a hotel room, it would be for me alone to sleep. Anyway, that'll do for the Championship. We'll do League One in part 2. Welcome to part 2 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So, League One, Birmingham have 83 points from 36. Wrexham 71 from 37. Wycombe 68 from 36. And I guess you could include Charlton 66 from 37 and Stockport 65 from 37 for the automatics. So, look, Birmingham is so far clear. Perhaps more interesting is below them. Wrexham 3 points clear of Wycombe thanks to a 1-0 win over them this weekend. A tight game won by Sam Smith, who I know scored some brilliant goals for Cambridge. Reading fans will know as well. Does this mean Paul Mullin is now available? I don't know, but that's a massive result for Wrexham, isn't it, Sanny?
Huge result, yeah. Since Matt Bloomfield left Wycombe, there's been a question mark over whether they can carry on what they're doing. The new man hasn't quite really done it at all. I mean, Wrexham are such a strange one because sometimes it kind of feels like vibes football. You know, they bring in all these players and then they put in all these crosses constantly, and there's always someone you remember from 10 years ago able to get on the end of it. And they've done it pretty much throughout the season. So they're coming into form at the perfect time. And yeah, this was a bit of a strange game. There was a medical emergency as well, so the game got delayed for quite a while. So credit to the players for being able to carry on, and I hope the person who was unwell is okay. But yeah, I mean, it's a great run for them. I mean, 1 defeat in 6 now for Wrexham. That's what's pushed them up there. And Wycombe have had a couple of difficult games as well, but that was only the second defeat at home in 17 games now. So it's a real kind of marker for Wrexham if they can push on. And I am worried a bit for Wycombe. And Richard Kone as well, who's been the star striker, and he's still got 20 goals in all competitions, but he's been injured for a really long time. And then, I don't know, it felt like he's linked away and he didn't go away, and there was talk of a massive bid that they turned down, and then he's not managed to come back in, and then he's finally come back in, and he's not quite hit the form, and all of a sudden it's not quite working for them. So yeah, worrying times for Wycombe.
George, would you put it between Wrexham and Wycombe, or do you give, especially Charlton on great form, a sniff?
Definitely. I mean, they're very much in it. I'd say, as Sanny alluded to, the Wycombe form had started kind of turning a little bit before Mike Dodds came in, so I wouldn't necessarily lay it all at his door. But he's right in that they're not the side that they were earlier in the season at the moment, and he's going to have to improve them immensely, I think, to get them back to being the second best side in the league. Wrexham, really impressed with what they're doing. That they've become in the last 6 months. They've gone from being, the Hollywood side, the high drama, the ridiculous high scoring games at home. They're now a proper Phil Parkinson side. It feels like he sucked that out of them now, and they are resolute, they're dogged, they're defensive. They have players like Sam Smith and Ollie Rathbone who are just absolute terriers, snapping at heels the whole time. And he's kind of built this team in his image, which is the right thing to do. You look back at his Bolton team that won promotion out of League One, despite massive off-field issues. He is very, very good. It hasn't been the remit for the last 2 years, but he's very good at taking a group of players and getting them to perform above their level. And despite all the noise around Wrexham's high spending, which is obviously true, it's still absolutely dwarfed by what Birmingham were able to do, even what Huddersfield have done in terms of spend over the last year or so. Charlton are absolutely flying. Nathan Jones's decision to ban his players from going to Costa Coffee and the local shopping centre Bluewater is obviously paying off. And it's just, I think it's a reminder to football. This is a guy in Nathan Jones did, I'd say, alongside Chris Wilder, one of the best jobs at a club in the last decade, where, yes, he only actually won one promotion with Luton because he jumped ship once, or jumped ship twice. But he, taking over Luton as a League Two side and leaving them twice, but both times, the second time, primed to be a Premier League team. And then he has basically a couple of bad months at Southampton and he had a couple of bad months at Stoke, and people basically write him off as some kind of joke figure. You don't do what he did at Luton without being very, very capable. And yeah, in a similar way to maybe someone like Gareth Ainsworth, it feels like he needs buy-in. Like there are going to be some players and some fans and some clubs who just look at what his methods and look at his character and say, nope, that's not for me. But now that he's got his teeth into Charlton, and it feels like Charlton are basically becoming Nathan Jones FC, I think with a lot of managers that can be a bad thing. With him, it's absolutely ideal. Like when he gets buy-in from his players, they become just winning machines, and that's exactly what they are now. And if history tells us anything, it's that this isn't a streak, this isn't a good moment. This is now what Nathan Jones does. And if Wrexham and Wycombe do drop off in any way, they'll absolutely hold them to account and keep them going. Same can be said of Stockport, who are, in some ways have actually probably improved as a team since Louis Barry left. I think the reliance on him on the left-hand side, he was so good at it that it yielded points, but now they're a better functioning side. And again, a huge win for them away at Bolton last time. And I expect at least one of Charlton or Stockport to be very much in with a shout of automatic promotion come the end of the season.
You're referring to Nathan Jones' post-match rant about his players doing nothing on rest days, insisting they should not move. And they certainly shouldn't be going to Blue Water and high-fiving fans. So he is good. He's good value, isn't he? I mean, his box office is not quite the right word, is it? But just like it's just a funny thing to say. Just imagine these poor people sort of getting out of bed and, their wife saying, could you possibly put the bins out? And just lying in stasis, not being able to do a thing. Elsewhere in the playoff hunt, Ben, what you've got, Huddersfield, Bolton and Reading, I guess, pushing those guys. Who do you expect to, who would you fancy?
Maybe Huddersfield, I think. I mean, there's more expectation around them. They've made quite a kind of brave decision, I suppose, in dispensing with Michael Duff, who I really like, to be honest. Did a really amazing job at Charlton and Barnsley. And the timing of that decision to get rid of him, interesting. But they've spent some money, and ultimately they were on a dreadful run, or a sort of worrying run. But yeah, they smashed Crawley 5-1 at the weekend. John Worthington, academy coach, is been given the job to the end of the season, so not going to get another face in until then. And obviously, it's now his job to try and lead them to promotion through the playoffs. Joe Taylor scored in the weekend, somebody who they signed, I think George alluded to earlier, in terms of the sort of recruitment and some of the spend there. But he's somebody I really like when they got him out of Luton. He scored a lot of goals at Lincoln. And yeah, I thought that's a great signing. It almost felt like a bit of a Stansfield sort of one at Huddersfield. And he got injured. It's not been quite as sort of brilliant as maybe everyone expected it to be. But yeah, I think Huddersfield, Reading obviously got Noel Hunt in charge now, which feels very sort of, 2006. But yeah, I think Huddersfield maybe would be my fancy there.
Love Noel Hunt. Got incredibly drunk with him once back in the glory years. Yeah, it was good fun. At the bottom then, this is depressing. Shrewsbury then, 28 points. Cambridge 29, Crawley 30, Burton 36, and then a jump to Bristol Rovers, Northampton, Peterborough. I think we've lost to all of them in the last, actually we've got Northampton soon, 42, Wigan 43. I keep thinking, George, we might win 9 in a row, and then be all right. And then I realise we've only won 7 all season. You just can't, you look at the league and go, okay, we've lost this one and this was the one. Each time you go, this is the one. But yeah, it's sort of, Burton maybe, but it's done, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it looks done to me. I think with Shrewsbury, Cambridge, and probably Crawley now, it's looking done. There was a moment before Christmas where it looked like all 4 of you were relegated before we even got to the end of the year, and then all 4 teams started winning, and you're like, wow, maybe we're going to get a bit of an exciting relegation battle. Burton are the only team now really capable of closing the gap to those above them. Cambridge have welcomed a brave new era by harking back to 2 old eras at the same time. In Mark Bonner's taking the reins as director of football and Neil Harris coming in as manager. I think there's an element, given the massive upheaval off pitch, where, and this is maybe a bit of a therapy session for you, Max, where getting relegated this season may not be the worst thing. I kind of think when you get relegated and suddenly you're a side with genuine promotion aspirations, with a budget that is competitive at the top end of the table, that's kind of the best time for people to implement their strategy and best practices. I think it's very difficult, say you stayed up by the skin of your teeth, as soon as that last ball is kicked, you're trying to work out immediately how you can outperform your budget and stay up in the league again from a pretty low ebb. So I think there are some instances where a relegation can be a good thing. Having said that, there have been quite a few occasions recently of teams getting relegated from League One going straight down again. Carlisle being the latest, seemingly of that.
Yeah, Carlisle. I'm looking at them. Yeah, I mean, I don't really mind what division we're in. Like, it doesn't stop me supporting them. Like, it's not just like I go, okay, you have some, and it's different from me. I'm not going week in, week out. I'm not going away from home, right? Where going to Birmingham is, they're like a big proper stadium, et cetera, with all due respect to the smaller stadiums, which are also proper, like Cambridge isn't a real one. But, you take my point. Like, it doesn't really, like, I still care as much. It doesn't bother me. I know, like, it makes a difference financially, and we are unlike, other clubs who struggle, we are a really well-run club. Like, they've got the football thing wrong, but they've got everything else right, and that is obviously a problem. But, like, I'm not in fear of the club going out of business. I'd love us to build steadily, and I think Neil Harris is as good a manager as we could get.
But that's kind of my point, is where you say they've got the football thing wrong. I mean, Cambridge probably have 22nd or 23rd budget in League One, and they're currently 23rd. Sure. It's kind of and that's the issue with when you are a side going into a season with a relegation budget, your fans think you should just outperform your budget, otherwise everyone should get sacked. And that's just not really the case. And so with Harris and with Bonner now, hopefully a long-term period at the club, it feels like for the whole club to kind of be galvanized in their image and their work, going down, winning games, and everyone kind of believing what they're doing, rather than going into a season knowing that if you are again 22nd going into December, which is probably where you should be, then everyone's going to be saying Bonner's doing a terrible job, Harris out, and the rest of it, which is just not a particularly conducive way of kind of building a project.
Yeah, I think getting 1 point in the first 9 games is never a great.
That was bad.
Not a great way. That was bad, wasn't it? Sanny, you had a good little bit on James Carragher, son of Jamie at Wigan.
Well, yeah, this is a fascinating one. So, Jamie Carragher's dad is from Malta, and James Carragher, his son, has come through the ranks at Wigan Athletic, and Jamie's gone and got a Maltese passport. So then James can then get a Maltese passport. So James Carragher has now been called up for the Malta national side and might be involved in the break. So that's an exciting one.
Do you think the Maltese FA, do you think they've called Jamie Carragher and been like, do you fancy it as well? Any chance? It might be 50, but you're still better than anything else we got.
Do you think on the turn, Jamie Carragher might be a bit slow now? I mean, look, while we're on international call-ups, Hamza Chowdhury as well, playing for Bangladesh, Sanny.
Yeah, this is great. So Hamza Chowdhury, straight off the back of the Steel City derby, because he's on loan at Sheffield United, has got on a plane to Bangladesh, and he's going to make his debut against India in Asian Cup qualifying. And it's just if you've been to South Asia, like it's just chaos. Like you get, whenever I've been to India, like you just all of a sudden it's just madness, right? You get a million people trying to get bags off you and carry your bags. People want money off you. So imagine being on loan from Premier League club, a professional footballer, an elite footballer, suddenly in Bangladesh. He's Bangladesh's best ever player before he's even played. He's completely mobbed. He's got a sea of microphones, people just shouting at him. And fair play to him. He says, he's hoping that they'll beat India and try and get them to a major tournament. But yeah, what a story. And fair play to him, because he's played for the England youth sides. He did hold ambitions of playing for England. That's passed him by. And to put himself through all that travel, to go through that circus, that craziness, but equally, he's going to be loved, and it'll inspire a whole generation there.
And you made a great spot, George, about the Bristol Rovers keeper. I love this.
Bristol Rovers' new young goalkeeper is called Jed Ward, which, when you put it together, is Jedward, which I absolutely loved. Yeah. He's come across my consciousness a few times, but it was only yesterday that I realised this, and I didn't stop laughing for a while. And also, he's 21, which means that he'd have been like 8 or 9 when Jedward was a thing. Amazing. Which just feels like an absolutely terrible age to be called Jedward. So I'm sure he won't thank me for bringing it up, but he's my new favourite player.
I think though, ultimately, I believe, I'm not totally across their work, that they've sort of turned out to be quite good sorts, Jedward. So, so like it was worth it. It was worth the pain of, X Factor 7 or what it was, but like, well done to him and his centre-backs who played just in front of him, Owen Quigg and Leona Lewis. Anything on League One you wanted to suggest, Ben, before we move on to League Two?
No, I was just going to say Burton felt like, they are the ones sort of probably spooking the rest of the guys above them now. Bristol Rovers being one of those teams. It's going to be, maybe a bit of a nervy end for, Northampton, Peterborough, Wigan maybe even. Gary Bowyer's done a great job at Burton, really. Just, 4 wins, 3 draws in the last 10. They kind of looked like they were cooked, really, that they were done. Northampton doing well under Kevin Nolan. Again, he's given them a bit of a lift. So, those teams kind of just above the relegation zone, probably feeling a bit nervous.
All right, good stuff. That'll do for part 2. Part 3, we'll do League 2. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So promotion from League 2. Top 3 go up, of course, and the next 4 go into the playoffs. Walsall have 69 points. I mean, they were miles clear pretty recently. Bradford, 66. AFC Wimbledon, 63. Doncaster, 63. Notts County and Port Vale, 61. Colchester, 58. Crewe, 57. Grimsby, if they went on a good run, although they're not on a good run at the moment, could break in on 56. Ian says the League 2 promotion race is chaos. Why are so many teams falling over themselves? Sanny, what do you think?
It's a mad one because Bradford, I thought, were a team that were really looking special now on this run, and then a complete calamity at the back to let Tranmere beat them, who have been struggling this season at the other end of the table. I mean, we've mentioned Walsall. They lost. Nathan Lowe went back to Stoke City. He was on loan. He was their main man. Without him, they've been lumping up to Jamil Matt. That's been a bit of a struggle. So they've come a bit unstuck. Bradford have been really impressive, and just when you think they're now going to put a run together, that was their first defeat second defeat actually in 9 games. So it starts to come away from them. I saw Doncaster a couple of weeks ago, and they look really impressive, and they've been hitting some good form, and then they've kind of come away. And I'm at Walsall Wimbledon actually on the 29th, and that all of a sudden feels like a huge game for the title. But with 3 going up, it's a lot more forgiving. So you have got that kind of wiggle room. But yeah, it's really interesting because for a time, the likes of Notts County were up there, and you thought, they're doing okay. And Colchester United were nowhere to be seen, and they've made a charge now. It really is changing. Well, that's why League 2 can be so exciting, because there is this complete variance, and you can't really nail your flags to the mast, although George and Ben might just do that now.
I mean, you guys are really selling League 2 to me, which is nice. I'm looking forward to it next year.
Yeah, you have a great time.
George?
But yeah, I mean, this is what we often say, like the Championship has this reputation for being the least predictable league in the world. Is it? Like, teams who get relegated to the Premier League normally finish in the top 4. Teams who get promoted out of League 1 normally finish towards the bottom, and everyone else in between. League 2 is the least predictable league in the world. League 2 is the one where the quality gap between the top and the bottom sides is relatively small, and it basically means that everyone beats each other fairly regularly. And that's shown at the top end of the league, where you have a top 5 where only one of the teams won on Saturday, compared to other leagues where they seem to churn out results every weekend. Walsall have been on this really long run of only a couple of wins, where the performances definitely dropped off, but they seem to basically concede a 25-yard screamer in every game, which feels a little bit unlucky and probably a bit unsustainable as well. And they're still 3 points clear at the top end. Bradford hosting a Tranmere side who've just sacked their manager, and lose the game 1-0 to a penalty. Like, it's just chaos. And this is the league that is really unpredictable. We've seen quite a few teams in the past do what Walsall would have done. Forest Green under Rob Edwards and Leyton Orient under Richie Wellens, where they get a huge gap at the top of the league and then idle a bit in front before actually then kind of sorting their form out and going on to win the league. And it wouldn't be a surprise if Walsall do that, but they definitely have to improve because they're miles off the team they were early in the season. We did a piece on the pod saying, "Are Walsall the best League 2 team ever?" And ever since then, I think they've only won 2 games. So
Ben, how's Lyle Taylor doing? I mean, Colchester 5 wins in a row. Lyle Taylor, who did not have a good time last year at Cambridge. Is he having a better time?
I think he's doing okay. I mean, the thing here is it's Danny Nicky Cowley, isn't it? Like, it is incredible. I was looking at the numbers. Like, 17th at the beginning of January, basically, when he comes in. Unbeaten since 4th of Jan. I think they lost the first 2 games, I think. And then since then, just been, this sort of dreamy run. Top 3 very much possible, 5 points off. And it's weird, isn't it? Like, not that long ago, there was obviously the amazing cup run with Lincoln, the promotions. Then they get the move to Huddersfield. That, since it's a disaster, but maybe that's pushing it. But it didn't work out. And then, now they've sort of been given this chance. It felt like quite the hospital pass, really, in January. And you're like, but actually, they could really end up this season with a promotion back on the CV. So I'm pleased for them. Amazing job. As you say, 5 wins in a row. And it's super tight. The other thing I was going to say was Ian Holloway at Swindon. I mean, another one who you thought, God, is he really sort of taken that over? Inherited total mess, really. Very unhappy fan base. I mean, they're just sailing away in towards this sort of mid-table zone.
And the fans weren't happy with him, with the appointment either. Like, he hadn't done well at Grimsby. I can't remember, he said something earlier about the place being cursed or something, some classic Ian Holloway stuff.
Yeah.
Which we all loved.
There was ghosts at the training ground.
But Swindon fans were like, we don't need this nonsense. We need to win. But I'm so pleased that he's doing well.
I can't remember if I came on here before and said, because I did a piece with him, I don't know, 8 weeks ago now or so, and I was talking to him about his paintings. I just love the fact he was doing acrylic paintings, not just of like, I don't know, he's got one of the Joker and different things, him and his wife Kim, but he was like painting actual like fellow managers. And whatever you say about Holloway, he has managed at the top. And this kind of thought of him just essentially painting, I mean, it's a bit of a stretch, but his kind of peers, if you like, in Guardiola and Klopp. Just found that amazing. Like, how many other people would kind of just sit there and paint people who are kind of technically in the same class as them?
Are they sitting for him?
No, I think he's just taking off photos, sadly.
Oh, what a shame. What a shame. And today, Steve Evans will be sitting for Ian Holloway. But yeah, I mean, he's a fascinating guy. He's built once Soccer Amy built a chicken coop for us. Once me and Barry were on TalkSport and he rang up while he was metal detecting.
Yeah.
And I mean, no one says artifact like Ian Holloway. George, you looked primed to come in.
He is someone who I've worked with a couple of times, and he is like his absolute adoration of football is quite something. I once hosted an EFL launch day at the Valley, and he, in the room full of fans, and he started telling a story about a kid, a Bristol Rovers fan who was terminally ill, and he was telling the story, and he just broke down in tears, like just in front of everybody. And he's obviously a guy who's been through a lot too. His adoration of the game is very obvious. I mean, there's also a game coming up over Easter where his Swindon side travel to Grimsby, and Grimsby Town is the one place in the country where Ian Holloway is not revered and his love of football isn't appreciated, because there were some very angry fans about the way that he conducted himself as manager there, and some accusations around the part that he played in some difficulty off the pitch. So that'll be a pretty spicy affair, you have to think. I think it's on Good Friday. But yeah, I mean, he's doing an amazing job at Swindon. There's no doubt about that.
I was just going to say, when I did the piece, it was when he was hitting 1,000 games. It's just sort of coming back to me, and that game was against Grimsby, and as George said, he was pretty kind of cut up that big milestone would be in that game, but they won, and yeah, obviously the rest is history, really. But yeah, one defeat in 10, and great. He's done a great job.
Bottom, Mark Hughes, Carlisle, 27 points from 36, Morecambe 30 from 37, and then a 6-point jump to Tranmere, 36 from 37, and then a 4-point jump. Harrogate have 40 points from 37, so probably fine. It seems, Sanny, like those two are done, are they, Carlisle and Morecambe? And like George mentioned it, Carlisle were in League One not too long ago, and we know all about the problems off the pitch at Morecambe.
Yeah, very sad for Morecambe, and going 1 up, then going down to 10, then going 2 up, and somehow drawing against Barrow last time out. It's just kind of symptomatic of where they're at under Derek Adams this season. It's not worked at all. All that off the field issues. They've got the lowest budget. That they're really struggling all round. Carlisle are a really strange one. On social media, there's all sorts of numbers about having this massive budget. I don't know how true that is. I don't know if I mentioned on the pod that I met the Piatics, the new owners, when they came in, and had grand visions. That was when they'd just been relegated to League One. They revamped the whole team for Mike Williamson into the January transfer window. It was like 14 players, something mad like that. Then they sacked him and brought in Mark Hughes, and it started to turn around. The loss to AFC Wimbledon, that was the second defeat in 6, but they were one defeat in 5, and things were looking okay. But it's just too late now, isn't it? It's really sad as well, because they've got a huge fan base up there. They've got a captive audience. They've got a decent enough stadium. It holds absolutely loads. It just hasn't come together at all. It's really, sad. The top scorer is Lavelle with 4. So all in all, it's not good at all. And I talk about the home games. He only won 2 out of the 17. So it's really bad. And I don't know how they're going to get out of it. I think the Piatics have learned on the job. Maybe some naive decisions all round. But that doesn't help the fans, does it? They've already gone through the mill of going into non-league and come back again. And it's really sad because when I went there, when they first came in, it looked like they'd be massively on the up, and instead it's gone completely the other way.
Before we go, you wanted to mention Anthony Barry, obviously international break. He's involved with England under Thomas Tuchel and has EFL beginnings, Ben.
Yeah, no, I just think it's sort of a great story, and it must be heartening to any kind of up-and-coming coach out there. Barry, I think, retired 30, had, pretty unremarkable playing career. Accrington, Forest Green, retired, had lots of injuries. And he just started coaching with Accrington Stanley's under-16s. And, I'm doing a piece on it. And it's just, what a ride he's been on. I mean, since then, working with Frank Lampard, him and Barry did their pro licence together. So Lampard took him into Chelsea after he impressed at Wigan. Paul Cook took him into Wigan. And then from there, it's just kind of snowballed into this kind of big club after big club. And then obviously countries, Portugal, Belgium, had a spell of Republic of Ireland. And now he's Tuchel's number 2, which is probably maybe why we see Dan Burn in the England squad as well, because Dan Burn was vice-captain of that Wigan team. But just a great sort of tale for up-and-coming coaches, I think.
All right, that'll do for today. Before we go, actually, Matt, who creates the video stuff that you can find on our Instagram and I believe our TikTok, I don't have TikTok, sent an amazing video from his Sunday League game, which we'll put up on our socials. Maybe the greatest handball ever. I've just put it in the group for you lot. It's an amazing handball. So it was Woodville Wanderers first versus our mate Matt's team, Bournemouth Sports Sunday first team. Woodville did win the game 5-0 in the end, but their opening goal after a tightly contested opening period was a handball, which is absolutely tremendous. I don't know, chaps, if you've... The first time, because it's very quick, first time I was like, oh, and then you see it and you think that is... I mean, there's no VAR, but you'd hope even a Sunday League ref who's in the centre circle might spot that. It's sensational, isn't it?
You've just said you couldn't see it first time up. Give the justice for the referee now, I think. You've admitted yourself it's hard to see first time, then you've given the referee criticism for not seeing it.
Well, I wasn't told it was a handball, first of all. I suppose the ref didn't expect it, but yeah, the video doesn't carry on, so we don't know. But I mean, honestly, that guy who does that, shame on. I'm not into public shaming, but absolutely disgraceful. Bournemouth Sports, by the way, they play their League Cup final on Thursday night under the lights. Good luck to them. And that'll do for today. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Ben.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, George.
Thanks, Max.
Thanks, Sanny.
Thank you.
Football Weekly is produced by Joel Grove. Our executive producer is Danielle Stevens. We'll be back on Thursday.
This is The Guardian.